years, President Barack Obama has tried to close the U.S. detention center at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Today, he delivered his plan to Congress. The blueprint involves transferring most of the detainees to other countries. The rest, deemed too dangerous to be moved abroad, would be relocated to a detention facility in the United States. Before terrorist suspects started arriving in 2002, you really didn't hear too much about Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, home to the oldest military base outside the U.S. 10 years ago, when critics were calling on the president to shut down Gitmo, I requested and was granted permission to visit the compound. And I spent 4 days there trying to see for myself why this facility had become such a lightning rod for critics.
Camps 1, 2, and 3 are for compliant prisoners.
By the time we arrived in 2006, Gitmo was described as a horrid den of torture, an accusation the military strongly denied and hoped to disprove with guided tours.
I would say there is no torture going on.
Nearly 800 suspected enemy combatants spent some time here, including the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who landed in Gitmo on the day I toured Camp Delta. We saw several makeshift prison camps serving as the world's jailer, some more secure than others.
This is Camp 4. This is a highly compliant camp.
10 years ago, critics claimed innocent men were being turned into potential terrorists at Gitmo, and there were problems.
They began to riot. They began to tie sheets up like they were going to kill themselves.
3 detainees hanged themselves here. Others made weapons, attacked guards, and threatened their families.
Are you concerned for your safety and for the safety of your family back home because of the position you're in?
Yes.
That's a concern.
Yes, it is a concern.
Interrogations in military tribunals were the norm, but most detainees were eventually released without charge. Today, fewer than 100 remain in this once secretive prison. On one side, the Caribbean. On the other side, the border of Cuba, where tension remains.
And as we stand here right now, we're being watched.
Yes, sir. There's a Cuban observation post northeast of us.
Inside, a man armed with a high-powered rifle and a pencil to write down our visit in Cuba's official record on Northeast Gate activity. As recently as last year, Cuban President Raul Castro demanded President Obama return what he called this illegally occupied territory to Cuba, saying it was necessary for renormalization of relations between the two countries. But for now, the Castros will have to settle for a plan to shut down the detention center, which is no slam dunk.
Well, there's still a lot of opposition to this. I mean, if you just listen to some of the chatter all day today.
Yeah, the Republican frontrunners, especially the candidates for president, they're vowing to fight this every step of the way, as are several members of Congress. And even if this happens along the way, there's no plan here to pull up stakes completely, because the U.S. naval station will remain there, and you can bet that's going to stick in the craw of President Raul Castro, who has made demands for us to get out as soon as possible.
In no uncertain terms.
Yeah, and today's news really coming less than a month before President Obama visits Cuba. You can bet this subject, along with the subject of lifting the U.S. trade embargo, will come up when the president sits down with Castro, and I plan to go back to Cuba to cover that historic trip.